Hello everyone, it's Sandov back again. And what better time to make a video like this since the Bikas update is just around the corner. A few things I want to address before we talk about all of the classes and all of their relic sets. This video is mainly focused on players that are above item level 1445 and higher, since that is the item level required to craft these relic sets. However, I will have a recommendation if you've done normal mode Vaulten a couple of times. I will talk about each class individually and the path that I recommend taking. We do have the Bikas release on the horizon and it is important to know the correct path to take. Since most players have begun doing Vaulten from release, it'll be quite simple to get these relic sets completed. Since it is now confirmed that we have the Salvation set in the game, I will be recommending the 2-set Salvation effect on top of the class's main relic set, since Salvation is just raw damage. This is so we can maximize our damage until Bikas releases. Then we can craft those Bikas relic pieces and transfer to full relic set within the first 2 to 3 weeks depending on your class. Also if you're doing normal, hard mode, buying boxes, etc. Fortunately, most classes will be able to have their full relic set within 2 to 3 weeks, since most sets don't use a Bikas weapon and instead use the Vaulten weapon. One more thing I want to talk about is the difficulty of Bikas hard mode. It is not like Vaulten hard. Trying to do Bikas hard at 1460 will be extremely challenging, and I'm willing to bet lots of players will not be able to clear hard mode in the first week. I recommend doing normal on the first week to get used to all of the moves and mechanics. I'll also be uploading my Bikas guide soon, so look forward to that. Alright, now we can begin talking about all classes and my recommendations on relic sets and the paths to take. I know there's multiple builds for a few classes, but keep in mind that I will be recommending the meta build, or most popular build of each class and or engraving. The way this spreadsheet works is quite simple. All relic sets are color coded and I have made steps towards the final outcome. The number 1 row refers to players who did Vaulten normal at least twice. If you have not done Vaulten normal and went straight to hard mode, skip the number 1 row. The number 2 row is my recommendation with our current content, no Bikas. The 3rd and 4th row is the final steps and final full set that you're gonna be aiming for. I have also added a one-time hard mode box purchase suggestion for players who are wondering if it's a good idea to buy this box once. I will not be talking about the number 1 row since the vast majority of players are 1445 on their mains. Alright, for Madness Berserker, we're going to prioritize crafting the 2-piece Nightmare on our helmet and top. And once we have enough materials for another 2 pieces, we'll craft the 2-piece Hallucination for the bottom and gloves. I would have recommended Salvation here, but Salvation does not work with Madness. Once Bikas is released, we can go ahead and craft the Nightmare shoulders as our first piece, and by this time we'll have enough materials to craft the Nightmare weapon as well, having a 4-set Nightmare and 2-set Hallucination. Then we'll only have to do Bikas hard mode 2 more times to complete the full Nightmare set, replacing the 2 Hallucination pieces. As far as buying the box, I highly advise against it, since acquiring 1 box makes no difference. Doing 3 times hard mode or 1 times normal with 2 hard mode will grant the full set no matter what. For Berserker's technique, we'll talk about the build that uses the Awakening, and for this reason we'll focus in the Dominion relic set. We'll build the top and the bottom Dominion pieces first, then Salvation, gloves and shoulders. The reason we won't go for the 4-set Dominion right off the bat, it's because it requires the weapon, and the weapon doesn't really increase your damage by a whole lot. It is much stronger to have a split with Salvation. Once Bikas is released, we'll only have to do Bikas hard mode twice and we'll receive the full set. We'll craft the gloves and shoulders to replace with Salvation. You'll then receive the Vaulten materials upon transferring, and you'll have more than enough materials to craft the weapon and helmet, making this a full set. As far as buying the box goes, I would only recommend buying it if you want the full set on the 2nd week and are planning to do normal mode once. For Blue Gun Lancer, we're going to prioritize the Nightmare 2-set effect first, then we'll build the Salvation 2-piece for the extra raw damage. Once Bikas is released, we'll go ahead and craft a Nightmare bottom as our first piece, and by this time we'll have enough materials to craft the Nightmare weapon as well, meaning we'll have a 4-set Nightmare, 2-set Salvation. Then eventually replace the 2 Salvation pieces for the Nightmare to complete the set. For Nightmare, it makes no difference if you buy the box or not. You'll have the full set in the 3rd week. For Red Gun Lancer, we'll prioritize the Entropy 2-piece, and yes, we will be building the weapon here. It's only going to take 1 extra week if you've been doing hard mode, and the damage output is much greater than having a 2-piece Salvation. Once we can build a 2-piece Salvation, then we can go ahead and craft those 2 pieces. Once Vicus is released, we'll need to do hard mode twice to receive a 4-set Entropy effect plus a 2-set Salvation effect, working our way towards a full Entropy set. For the box, I would only recommend buying it if you want the full Entropy set on the 3rd week with 3 hard mode clears. For Destroyer, it'll be the exact same thing as Red Gun Lancer, no different. Entropy 2-piece into Salvation, then work our way towards a full Entropy set. For Sorceress, we'll prioritize the 2-piece Nightmare first, since we do need that mana reduction heavily plus raw damage. Once we can build 2-piece Salvation, we can go ahead and craft it until Vicus drops. Once Vicus is released, we can go ahead and craft the Nightmare bottom on our first run, as well as the Nightmare weapon, since by this time you'll have enough materials to do so, having a 4-piece Nightmare and 2-piece Salvation, working our way towards a full Nightmare set. And as far as buying the box for full Nightmare users, there is no use, it makes no difference. For Scrapper, it'll be Entropy priority. The Entropy 2-set effect is just way too strong to ignore. Once we can craft Salvation, we'll get 2-piece for that, and when Vicus is released, we'll go ahead and craft the top and bottom, slowly working our way towards a full Entropy set. For the box, I would only recommend buying it if you want the full Entropy set on the 3rd week with 3 hard mode clears. Striker. It'll be the exact same thing. Striker is an Entropy user, so we'll take the same path as the other Entropy users. And we have Robust Spirit Soulfist using Entropy too, so that'll be the exact same path as well. For Energy Overflow Soulfist, we'll take the Dominion 2-set effect as our priority, then work towards getting a 2-set Salvation effect as well. Once Vicus is released, we'll only have to do 2 hard modes, then switch our Salvation into Dominion, get our Vaulted materials back, and craft the full Dominion set, which we'll have more than enough materials for. Do not buy the box if you're doing hard mode. Only buy it if you want the full set on the 2nd clear and did 1 normal mode. For the Esoteric Enhancement War Dancer, it'll be the exact same path as Energy Overflow Soulfist. For War Dancers with First Intention, it'll be just a bit different. Instead of prioritizing Dominion, our first 2 pieces should be Nightmare, since First Intention has mana problems. We'll then go ahead and craft 2-piece Dominion. We could also go for 2-piece Salvation instead of Dominion, but Dominion will just be 1 more week of hard mode, and spamming skills with Dominion is a lot more fun and is also stronger than Salvation. This is your choice, but I recommend this path. You could build 2 Salvation last if you've been doing hard mode since the beginning and Vicus has not released. Once Vicus is released, we can craft the 2-piece Dominion effect and keep the 2-piece Nightmare effect. This is the only build where we won't go for the full 6-side effect. We'll instead keep the 2-piece Nightmare and 4-piece Dominion. Reason being, you can spam skills freely without having to worry about mana issues. If you're starting out on hard Vicus, there is no need to purchase this box. Only buy the box if you want this set on the 2nd week and did normal mode once. For Pinnacle Glaivier, we're gonna prioritize the 2-piece Nightmare into 2-piece Salvation. Once Vicus is released, we can go ahead and craft both the bottom piece and the weapon for Nightmare, having a 4-set Nightmare and 2-piece Salvation. And once we can craft the last 2 Nightmare pieces, we'll replace the 2 Salvation pieces. And Pinnacle being a full Nightmare user, we will not be buying the box, it makes no difference. For Control Glaivier, we'll take the Entropy route, prioritizing Entropy since it is a huge damage jump, and then we get the 2-piece Salvation with the extra materials. Once Vicus is released, keep the 2-set Salvation while building 2 more Entropy pieces and eventually work your way into a full Entropy set. Only buy the box if you really want the full set on your 3rd hard mode Vicus clear. Alright, for Artillerist Firepower Enhancement, we'll go for Nightmare. Artillerist has a few builds and this one is specific to the Swiftness one, being the most popular one. We'll then craft the 2-piece Salvation afterwards with the extra materials, and once Vicus is released, we can craft both the Nightmare bottom piece and weapon piece, having a 4-set Nightmare plus 2-piece Salvation. We'll then work on crafting the last 2 pieces after 2 more hard mode clears. Being a full Nightmare user, there is really no difference in buying the box or not, so do not buy it. For Enhanced Weapon Deadeye, we're gonna jump right into the 2-set Entropy, then work on getting the 2-piece Salvation afterwards. Once Beacus is released, we can craft 2 pieces and have a 4-set Entropy, 2-set Salvation, slowly working our way towards a full Entropy set. Only buy the box if you want the full Entropy set on the 3rd week with 3 hard mode clears. For Pistolier Deadeye, it is a little bit weird since we'll craft both Nightmare and Salvation, then we're gonna be swapping everything into Hallucination afterwards. Since the Hallucination 2-set effect has a downtime, it's not really that strong by itself. So when Beacus is released, we're going to craft the helmet and top, replacing the Nightmare 2-set. This means we're gonna receive our materials back, and we can use those materials to craft the Hallucination, gloves and shoulders. We'll then have to be patient to craft the weapon, since Hallucination is one of those sets that requires Beacus materials for the weapon. Then we can have the full Hallucination set. For the box, it makes no difference if you do hard mode, but if you want it on the 4th week and did 1 normal mode, you'll require to buy 1 box. For Deathstrike Sharpshooter, we'll focus on the 2-piece Nightmare into the 2-piece Salvation. Once Beacus is released, we can craft both Nightmare, weapon and top, keeping the 2-piece Salvation as well. Then switch your Salvation to Nightmare eventually. Being a full Nightmare user, there's no use to buying the box as it makes no difference. For Loyal Companion Sharpshooter, we're gonna focus on building both Salvation and Nightmare. Just like Pistolier Deadeye, we're gonna switch everything into Hallucination eventually, and right now, 2-set Hallucination is not very good. Once Beacus releases, we can craft the Hallucination top and helmet, replacing the Nightmare and using the materials we received from the transfer for Hallucination gloves and shoulders. Then we'll slowly work on getting the full Hallucination set. For the box, it makes no difference if you do hard mode, but if you want it on the 4th week and did 1 normal mode, you'll require to buy 1 box. For Gunslinger, we'll focus on the 2-set Nightmare into the 2-set Salvation. Once Beacus releases, we'll craft the Nightmare weapon and bottom, keeping a 2-set Salvation effect as well. Then we'll replace those 2 Salvation pieces for Nightmare. As for buying the hard mode box, it makes no difference, so don't buy it. For Perfect Suppression Shadowhunter, we'll do the exact same route as Gunslinger. Nothing is different. For Demonic Impulse Shadowhunter, it's an interesting one since there's really not much sets she can take advantage of. So we're gonna be crafting the 2-piece Salvation and keep the legendary sets. If you don't have Demon Beast, that's totally fine. We'll have to wait for Beacus for our moment to shine. Once Beacus releases, we can craft the 4-set Hallucination effect for our 1st week, and then we'll just have to wait for the weapon and helmet afterwards. If you're starting out in hard mode, buying the box makes no difference. Only buy it if you want the full set on the 4th week and did normal mode 1 time. For Deathblade, it'll be just full on Entropy priority. Then we're gonna be crafting the 2-piece Salvation before Beacus release. Once Beacus releases, we'll craft the Entropy top and bottom, keeping the 2-set Salvation active as well. Then we're gonna replace Salvation for Entropy for the full Entropy relic effect. You can acquire a full set by purchasing the box once and doing hard mode 3 times. If not, it'll be 4 weeks of hard mode. Alright, and for supports, our main focus is to build that Yearning 2-set effect into the Dominion 2-set. Once Beacus is released, we can craft 2 more Yearning pieces, then switch our Dominion to Yearning last. You can acquire a full set by purchasing the box once and doing hard mode 3 times. If not, it'll be 4 weeks of hard mode. Alright guys, this was quite some work, but I am honestly so happy to help out. Since my last video about this was more focused on normal mode Boltyn, I did not realize the amount of players that were doing hard mode right off the bat with their mains. Hopefully this information was useful to you guys, and I apologize if I did not cover your build. There is a lot of builds in this game, and that's the beauty of it. Perhaps in the future I'll make guides on off-meta builds. Thank you all so much for watching, I'll see you next time.